Good morning, guys. I'll say good afternoon, guys. Myself, Dr. Fusion, and today I would like to thank Dr. R.K. Mudgal sir and Manoj Deshmukh sir for inviting me here for this talk. And I think my voice is clear to everyone. Hello. Okay, so there is some problem with the network. Just a second. Hello. Just a second. I'm back again. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm not very thorough with the web and everything. So I would like to thank Haryana Chartered Association of Physiotherapists for organizing. Every year they organize Harpon, and I don't know how it happens that every time I give my dates and time to them and to Dr. Mudgal, and I'm not able to reach on time. So I'm very thankful and glad that this time I'm able to meet to this stage. And thank you very much, R.K. Mudgal sir, for your efforts you have done for the field as well as to organize this conference. So my topic today is the one of the most controversial, you can say, debatable topic in the physiotherapy fraternity, that is dry needling. So as you know that if you talk about other countries, like you talk about the different states in US, UK, South Africa, so these all states and all countries have accepted dry needling as in the scope of physiotherapy practice, whereas still we are lacking somewhere in researches, we are lacking somewhere in the meta-analysis, we are lacking somewhere in it to accept it in the Indian scope of practice. But I'll be very happy to share that many universities has included this dry needling as the part of their curriculum in masters as well as bachelors, and even the council, what syllabus they have given, they have included this also, the dry needling. So coming to the topic, whenever we do something like this, we need to have some questions in our mind, and we should address some questions, beforehand going to a topic. So some questions which pop to everybody's mind is, first of all, what is this topic all about? What is dry needling? Why everybody is going crazy about the technique? Why everybody is going after the technique? Why people are going against this technique? So what is the dry needling? The second question I'd like to address, because we are using some needles in this, so the main the problem of the system, you can say, that we as a human being, we try to generalize everything. We don't understand what is a brand, we don't understand what is a generic technique, we don't understand what is a generic modality. We just give names to things as their brands. I'll put in simple example. There is something called as resistive bands. People call them TheraBands because TheraBand is the company, the brand which introduces in the market. So TheraBand is a brand. What is the generic term for the product? The product is called as resistive band. So you can have resistive band of multiple companies. They should not be called TheraBand. Same way, what needles we are using here are not acupuncture needles. Commonly they are used in acupuncture. That's why they call it as acupuncture needles. Okay, they are just stainless steel hypodermic needles. Simple as that. It means like if a physician is using a stethoscope, you don't call it as a physician stethoscope or a pediatrician stethoscope or an orthopedician stethoscope or a cardiorespiratory physiotherapist stethoscope. Stethoscope is stethoscope. Same way, there is nothing called as acupuncture needle. The needles are called as needles. They are called as stainless steel hypodermic needles. They have a size, they have a length, they have a width, they have the thickness. So this is how you should label everything. You don't fall into the this mess of brand names, because brand names gonna confuse the generic technique. The next thing is, because we somewhere or the others we try to collaborate it with the topic called as acupuncture. So most probably people think that the origin is Chinese. Okay, and the next question is it unscientific? Because most of the things, many of the things which come into the market, maybe they can work on a unscientific method, or else after years of research, they come to a conclusion they are not scientific relevant. And the next is the placebo. Is it a placebo? So I would like to address these are the questions. First these questions, and then I can take some of the questions from the audience itself. The first answer is that acupuncture, because it has, from a physiotherapy perspective, if you go to the APTA website and you search the resource paper even for the Canadian Physiotherapy Association, South African Physiotherapy Association, Irish Society of Physiotherapy, even this chartered physiotherapy association. So there are many associations in the world which basically take care of the physiotherapy profession in that country, which tells you that what is dry needling. So dry needling is not similar to acupuncture. It has a medical background taken from anesthesiologists and other beings. As given by Jan Dommerholt in 2001, things clearly state that trigger point needling has no similarities with traditional acupuncture, because traditional acupuncture is a kind of an ancient traditional Chinese medicine which works on more of hypothesis rather than more on scientific basis, right? Next, is it Chinese? No, it is not Chinese, because most of the therapies, most of the literatures, most of the technique which came are from Europe, America, and Canada. Like I can give some names like there's Clergan, Peter Waldry, Chan Gun, Dr. J. Dommerholt. Dr. James Dommerholt has given, I think, the most of the researches in this field, and it's not wrong to call him the father of dry needling right now. Is it scientific? Yes, it is scientific. We have good amount of independent researches. We have good amount of RCTs on this. Still, the researches are in infancy stage. I'm not saying that it is like, yes, it is a complete foolproof plan. But yes, we are working on that. People are working across the globe. They are working even in Indian universities. Students are taking it as a project in their masters, and they are working on it. And hopefully, we'll get something good. The same way goes with the placebo, because we have good researches. We can say it is not a placebo. Okay, so what is dry needling? So dry needling is basically, as the name suggests, dry. Dry means we are not using any wet substance. Wet substance as in we are not using any pharmacological substance. We are not using anesthetic agent. We are not using steroids. We are not using saline. We are not using anything medical, because I think you know that as per the Pharmacological Act of India that only certain people are authorized to prescribe and practice drug, and physiotherapy is a field which is like non-drug field. So we don't prescribe drug, we don't practice drug. So dry is very important term in this. And next is a needle. Right? So inserting a monofilament needle, the needle should not have a cavity inside a trigger point. Okay. So I'll again repeat. So putting a needle inside a trigger point or a myofascial bundle to get some results called as dry needling. And we are not using any dry substance in this, right? As people do in injection therapies. So what are the types of dry needling? I will try to make it very short. So basically we work on 3 to 4 factors here. So first is called as superficial dry needling. The second is called as a deep dry needling. And a part of superficial is known as facial dry needling. Not the face, the fascia of the body. So when we talk about the deep dry needling, the first model comes as a trigger point model. So everybody, I think all physios are very well known what is a dry needling, trigger point model. So when we talk about trigger point, the definition given by Janet and Travels in 1992 is a self-explanatory, definition of a trigger point. I'll just speak it loud. It's a hyper-irritable spot in a skeletal muscle associated with hypersensitive palpable nodule in a taut band. So we are working with 3 terms here. First is a hyper-irritable spot, second is a hypersensitive palpable nodule, and next is a taut band. So taut band is the fiber of the muscle or anything which is under maximum tension at rest. First, they have to be hypersensitive, means with less of pressure, they will give you some symptoms. Hyper-irritable, they will give you more symptoms with less palpation. So this is the definition given by Janet and Travels and Simmons in 1992 about trigger points. So what are the characteristics? They are palpated as sausages and band, and to vegetarian I can tell you it's like a soybean chunk. You soak it in water, take it out, it feels something like that. And most important thing, these are always secondary to a primary dysfunction. They are not the primary factor. So they are always secondary to a primary dysfunction. There has to be a primary dysfunction which can range from dehydration to vitamin deficiency, to protein deficiency. Then there is overloading, offloading, postural disturbances, trauma, vitamin D3 deficiency, B12. So there are multiple factors which evolve around developing a trigger point. So it's always better whenever we are dealing with a trigger point. It's or not whenever a trigger point. Anything, you should cater the primary factors for sure, right? Now, that's why we always say the exercise is the best medicine, because exercise is one of the things which will help these adjunct modalities like dry needling and other adjunct modalities to work better. Because when we make a treatment, it is a whole soul of many techniques a therapist know. So treatment is a patient-based thing, and the skills or the modalities what we use a therapist based thing. So modalities can differ, but the treatment remains to be the same. Treatment means what patient needs and what patient condition on, and we are treating the patient, we are not treating a joint, so that has to be taken into consideration. And it typically develops in a muscle which is overloaded. So there can be multiple type of overload. There can be a neurological overload as seen in spasticity. There can be a mechanical overuse, and there can be a protective overuse in synergist or antagonist as seen in postural disturbances. So we have some ultrasound image, so you can use even the diagnostic ultrasound to find out where the trigger points are. So when we see a trigger point, there will be like the fascia will be seen as a thick white fibrous layer, because ultrasound work on a principle of bouncing back. In India, we are not able to actually use ultrasound ourselves. We need to have a proper license. So you can have an ultrasoundologist who knows MSK ultrasound. And when you do that ultrasound, the fascia will give you a thick white layer, and the muscle will give you less thicker white layer. And if you feel a black spot, a black hole, a black circular thing inside a muscle, it probably a trigger point. It is called as a hypoechoic spot. So what is hypoechoic spot means? That this is not giving you echo back, it's absorbing more of the ultrasound. This is one of the diagnostic thing what you can do. Then there is 2D graphs, 3D graphs, where it tells you about the vascularity of the area. So if there is a trigger point, the vascularity will be compromised. So what are the symptoms of trigger point when we talk about dry needling? So it's like it's constantly dull aching. It is locally tender. It gives you LTR, that is local twitch response on stimulation. It may report paresthesia, because trigger point going to shorten the muscle length, and short muscle can entrap a nerve or a sensory nerve. It characterized referred pain as demonstrated by Trell-Simmons. So what is referred pain? Everybody knows that it is by like convergence projection theory as per the spinal cord model. So please read that once. Then this trigger point can cause muscle weakness and loss of range of motion and coordination as well. Yes, it is indicated in spasticity. Initially, we don't have some researches now, but we have researches like use of dry needling, painful. I'm very sorry. Painful hemiplegic shoulder in hemiplegia. So yes, you can do it in spasticity, but it's not going to reduce the spasticity as per me, because we don't know what are the central effects of dry needling. But yet surely it helps to reduce the secondary complication which happens due to spasticity, that is the shortening of the muscle, formation of trigger points. So indirectly, yes, it will help to improve the length of the muscle. You can use dry needling for multiple muscles. You can use dry needling for multiple muscles. You can use dry needling for multiple muscles. Like you can suppose you have a patient of plantar fasciitis. So patient is giving you a plantar fasciitis, right? I'm really sorry for this. So patient is giving you the symptom of plantar fasciitis, but when you do a what precaution? I'll come to the precautions as well. So when we talk about the gastrocnemius, the plantar fasciitis. So whenever the patient have plantar fasciitis, it comes to us, we do a thorough assessment, and one of the cause of the plantar fasciitis can be a referral from trigger point of medial gastrocnemius, right? It can give you a referral to the medial aspect of the foot, or if we have a trigger point in the gastrocnemius, what it can lead to? It can lead to change in the biomechanics of the foot, and change in the biomechanics of the foot, what it will lead to? It will change the orientation of the foot and the gait pattern, which can severely hamper the. I'll surely answer the question. It can severely hamper the movement of your plantar fascia and may lead to plantar fascia. So coming to how it works, dry needling works. So we suggest 3 factors on this. The first is the neurophysiological factors as given by Peter Baldry in 2001. They suggest that dry needling stimulate basically A nerve fibers, that is A delta nerve fibers, which are pain carrying fibers, and this response can be there till 72 hours, which gives response called as OMAS, opioid mediated analgesic system. That means there is release of opioids from the central nervous system, or basically the preaqueductal gray, and which helps to reduce the pain, right? Next mechanism is a chemical mechanism given by Shah et al. In 2001 itself. They said that at the sensitized motor implant, means where the trigger points are, there is increased level of bradykinin, substance P, CGRP. And after the trigger point therapy is done, this trigger point needling is done, there is much more lower level of these chemicals at the site. So this is the second thing what happens with dry needling. And the third comes the mechanical effect. So what is the mechanical effect? It is like this research is named as neuromuscular damage and repair after dry needling in mice, evidence-based complementary and alternative medicine. You can see this. So what it supposes that whenever we are doing a needling in a muscle, it basically what it does, it creates a local lesion or local injury which will heal itself within 7 days of the injury, which gives us an idea that if you're treating a trigger point with dry needling, at least give us 7-day rest. So rest in dry needling is much more important than the treatment itself. You need to give rest to the body to heal. You need to give rest. Rest means only dry needling is not prescribed. Rest of the protocol can be done like that. The stretchings, the exercise will continue as such. Only the strenuous exercise should not be there till 48 hours because of the inflammation. Coming to the contraindication, there are multiple contraindications. People have asked about the contraindication and precautions. The first is the denial of consent. Nothing should be done without denial of the consent. Patient needle phobia. If the patient is unwilling, acute fever infection, lymphedema, psychiatric disease, patient with epilepsy, diabetes, compromised immune system, malignant tumors, bleeding disorders, or patient on anticoagulant, it's very important to take a thorough history that patient should not be on anticoagulants. If the patient is on anticoagulants, please check the PTNR of the patient, VTCT of the patient, and directly over joint replacement. That means on the replaced part. That is this is what we imply. And pregnancy is not considered. Pregnancy is basically not considered as a part of a complete contraindication. But I would like to, say that we should keep a pregnancy also in the contraindication part. So what is the explanation to the patient? It's very important again the point that procedure should be explained, inform them what kind of needle we are using. We are using a single-used sterile needle. We are not reusing the needle. So we just open the packet in front of the patient so that patient knows what we are doing. And brief, explanation of how dry needle is gonna work, how it is, if they ask how it is different. Transient symptom during or after the treatment, what is the difference? And what are your post-treatment advices? So what it takes to learn and practice dry needling, it's very important that the knowledge, we divide it into 75 to 25%. So 75% is your anatomical knowledge, palpation skill, selection of patient, and 25% is your skill. Very important that if you're thorough with your knowledge of anatomy, you're thorough with your assessment, you're thorough with your patient selection, then only your skills will perform better. It's very important to, whenever you are, assessing a patient, you are giving something called as a probable diagnosis. There can be multiple diagnoses. So I called it as a more or less like a hypothesis. We are making a clinical hypothesis that yes, patient can suffer from this, and in due course of time, maybe there are multiple factors, there are multiple issues which are coming together. So we need to deal with all of them. What materials are required? Everybody knows you need needles, you need swabs, you need spirit, you need alcohol swabs, cotton, gloves, mask, shield. Nowadays you need whole PPE kit. So what is the financial burden? Very important point. So cost per sitting can range anything as you like from 300 to I've seen that people can take 3,000 to 5,000 baht a session. Cost per needle is basically 2 to 4 rupees per needle, give or take 1 rupees. Average number of needle used per session can range from 1 to 10 to 20 maximum. So your average cost will be around 50 to 60 bucks per needling session, and you are getting a good return of investment. It is cheap, effective, and reliable single shot tool. But again, whenever we say something is effective and reliable, we have to work more with the scientific methods. And at the end, I would say that yes, dry needling is one of the good, a technique or a modality to be used. But we have to take a lot of precautions, a lot of efforts in taking the assessment and history of the patient before coming to any conclusion that patient needs dry needling or not. So I think I can take some of the question. Can we use it on a contracture? So if the contract, where the end field is firm and soft, yes, dry needling will be helpful. So I can't comment about the contracture, what kind of contractures you are talking about. Yes, if the firm field will go with the basics. If the firm field is firm and soft, yes, dry needling will help you with that. Taking into consideration what are the structures at fault. Precaution you have to take that detailed history is important. Patient is on anticoagulant, you have to check pregnancy you have to check, the primary factors you have to check, the pain threshold of the patient to be checked. If the patient is very apprehensive to get needling, you need to console or you need to stop doing dry needling. And the most common problem what people do is, whenever patients shout with pain, they say that pain will happen because it is needling. No, you need to give respect to the pain of the patient. Right? You will need to give respect to the pain of the patient. Let me check other questions. Okay. So if the patient is having needle phobia, how to convince? So first of all, you need not to convince anyone. You are a professional, and if you are telling your patient that this has to be done to make you better, you should have that rapport that patient should understand your work, and then only you will be able to do anything. And still, if the patient is not able to perform do this, he is not happy with the needling, I told you it's called as denial of consent. You are not going to perform dry needling. Hello sir, can we use dry needling for OA patient and from where to get certified? So there are multiple institutes from where you can get certified for dry needling, and I'll tell you very frankly that nobody can certify you to practice dry needling. Please contact your authorities, your the association or the councils in place. They describe and they give you the scope of practice. No institution in India can give you the scope of practice or the label that you can practice or not. Yes, you can use dry needling in OA patients, so you need to, basically we don't give anything on the joint, but yes, near about all the muscles you can do dry needling, the weakers and the muscles within spasm. You can use even pens, that is giving electrical stimulation in needling to get the results. So this is all with my presentation. I am thankful to the organizing committee, Dr. Mudgil, Dr. Manoj Deshmukh and other people, and our senior fellows, Dr. Mohanty sir, Siddiq sir and other members who have joined during this conference, given their precious time to take the lectures. I'll bid goodbye. Thank you for providing me this platform. Thank you very much.